Today I'm going to be reading Jordan B. Peterson. Today I'm going to be reading Jordan B. Peterson, 12 Rules for Life, an Antidote to Chaos. As you can see right there, it says the most influential public intellectual in the Western world right now, New York Times. Okay, I got about 47 minutes. I'm new to this, new to YouTube, new to everything. And right now I'm about I'm 19, almost 20. I could be real personal with you guys, but I'm going to see how everything turns out. You know, I got many options in my life, but we're going to start with you guys. 12 Rules for Life, an Antidote to Chaos. Rules for Life, an Antidote to Chaos. An audiobook by David Gowans. I don't like my name in there. Rule 1. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Forward. We're going to skip all these X's and go straight to chapter 1. Maybe. Give me just a second. Hold on. As we go to rule number 1. Stand up with your shoulders back. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. I have 30 pages to go through. Are you guys ready? Are you, ladies and gentlemen, ready? Oh, the way time flies. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Lobsters and territory. If you're like most people, you don't often think about lobsters unless you're eating one. However, these interesting and delicious crustaceans are very much worth considering. Their nervous systems are comparatively simple, with large, easily observable neurons, the magic cells of the brain. Because of this, scientists have been able to map the neural circuitry of lobsters very accurately. This has helped us understand the structure and function of the brain and behavior of more complex animals, including human beings. Lobsters have more in common with you than you might think, particularly when you are feeling crabby. Ha ha. Lobsters live on the ocean floor. They need a home base down there, a range within which they can hunt for prey and scavenge around for stray edible bits and pieces of whatever rains down from the continual chaos of carnage and death far above. They want somewhere secure, where the hunting and gathering is good. They want a home. They can present a problem, since there are many lobsters. What if two of them occupy the same territory at the bottom of the ocean at the same time, and both want to live there? What if there are hundreds of lobsters, all trying to make a living and raise a family, in the same crowded patch of sand and refuse. Other creatures have this problem too. When songbirds come north in the spring, for example, they engage in ferocious territorial disputes. The song they sing, so peaceful and beautiful to human ears, and siren calls and cries of domination. A brilliantly musical bird is a small warrior proclaiming his sovereignty. Take the wren, for example, a small, feisty, insect-eating songbird common in North America. A new arrived wren wants a sheltered place to build a nest away from the wind and the rain. He wants it close to food and attractive to potential mates. He also wants to convince competitors for that space to keep their distance. Birds and territory. My dad and I designed a house for a wren family when I was 10 years old. It looked like a Conestoga wagon and had a front entrance about the size of a quarter. This made it a good house for wrens, who are tiny and not so good for other, larger birds who couldn't get in. My elderly neighbor had a birdhouse too, which we built for her at the same time, from an old rubber boot. It had an opening large enough for a bird the size of a robin. She was looking forward to the day it was occupied. A wren soon discovered our birdhouse and made himself at home there. We could hear his lengthy, thrilling song repeat over and over during the early spring. Once he built his nest in the covered wagon, however, our new avian tenant started carrying small sticks to our neighbor's nearby boot. He packed it so full that no other bird, large or small, could possibly get in. Our neighbor was not pleased by this preemptive strike, but there was nothing to be done about it. If we take it down, said my dad, clean it up and put it back in the tree, the wren will just pack it full of sticks again. Wrens are small and they're cute, but they're merciless. I had broken my leg skiing in the previous winter, first time down the hill, and had received some money from a school insurance policy designed to reward unfortunate, clumsy children. I had pursued a cassette recorder, a recorder tech novelty at the time. With the proceeds, my dad suggested that I sit on the back lawn, record the wren song, play it back, and watch what happened. So I went out in the bright spring sunlight and taped a few minutes of the wren laying furious claim to his territory with the song. Then I let him hear his own voice. That little bird, 1/3 the size of a sparrow, began to dive bomb me and my cassette recorder, swooping back and forth, inches from the speaker. We saw a lot of that sort of behavior, even in the absence of the tape recorder. If a larger bird ever dared to sit and rest in any of the trees near our birdhouse, there was a good chance that he would get knocked off his perch with a kamikaze wren. Now, wrens and lobsters are very different. Lobsters do not fly or perch in trees. Wrens have feathers, not hard shells. Wrens can breathe underwater and are seldom served with butter. However, they are also similar in important ways. Both are obsessed with status and position. For example, like a great many creatures, the Norwegian zoologist and comparative pet psychologist Leif Schroeder Ebbe observed back in 1921 that even common barnyard chickens establish a pecking order. The determination of who's who in the chicken world has important implications for each individual bird's survival, particularly in times of scarcity. The birds that always have priority access to whatever food is sprinkled out in the yard in the morning are the celebrity chickens. After they come the second stringers, the hangers on, the wandens. After them come the second stringers. The hangers on and wannabes. The third rate chickens have their turn, and so on, down to the bedraggled, particularly feathered and badly pecked wretches who occupy the lowest, untouchable stratum of the chicken hierarchy. Chickens, like subordinates, live communally. Songbirds, such as wrens, do not, but they still inhabit a dominance hierarchy. It is just spread out over more territory. The wildest, strongest, healthiest, and most fortunate birds occupy prime territory and defend it. Because of this, they are more likely to attract high-quality mates and to hatch chicks who survive and thrive. Protection from wind, rain, and predators, as well as easy access to superior food, makes for a much less stressed existence. Territory matters, and there is little difference between territorial rights and social status. It is often a matter of life and death. If a contagious avian disease sweeps through a neighborhood of well-stratified songbirds, it is the least dominant and most stressed birds. Occupying the lowest rungs of the bird world, who are most likely to sicken and die. This is equally true of human neighborhoods. When bird flu viruses and other illnesses sweep across the planet, the poor and stressed always die first, and in greater numbers. They are also more susceptible to non-infectious disease such as cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. When an aristocracy catches a cold, as it is said, the working class dies of pneumonia. Because territory matters, and because the best locals are always in short supply, territory seeking among animals, products, conflict in turn, products, another problem. How to win or lose without disagreeing parties, incurring too great cost. The latter point is particularly important. Imagine that two birds engage in a squabble about a desirable nesting area. Their interaction can easily degenerate into outright physical combat. Under such circumstances, one bird, usually the largest, will eventually win, but even the victor may be hurt by the fight. That means a third bird, an undamaged, canny bystander, can move in opportunistically and defeat the now crippled victor. That is not at all a good deal for the first two birds, conflict in territory. Over the millennia, animals who must cohabit with others in the same territories have, in consequence, learned many tricks to establish dominance, while risking the least amount of possible damage. A defeated wolf, for example, will roll over on its back, exposing its throat to the victor, and who will not then deign to tear it out. The now dominant wolf may still require a future hunter partner after all, even one as pathetic as his now defeated foe. Bearded dragons, remarkable social lizards, wave their front legs peacefully at one another to indicate their wish for continued social harmony. Dolphins produce specialized sounds, pulses while hunting, and during other times of high excitement to reduce potential conflict among dominant and subordinate groups members. Such behavior is endemic in the community of living things. Lobsters scuttling around on the ocean floor are no exception. If you catch a few dozen and transport them to a new location, you can observe their status forming rituals and techniques. Each lobster will first begin to explore the new territory, partially to its map, its details, and partly to find a good place for shelter. Lobsters can learn a lot about where they live, and they remember that they learn what they learn. If you startle one near its nest, it will quickly zip back and hide there. If you startle it some distance away, however, it will immediately dart towards the nearest suitable shelter previously identified and now remembered. A lobster needs a safe hiding place to rest, free from predators and forces of nature. Furthermore, as lobsters grow, they molt or shed their shells, which leaves them soft and vulnerable for extended periods of time. A burrow under a rock makes a good lobster home, particularly if it is located where shells and other detritus can be dragged into place to cover the entrance. One, the lobster is snugly ensconced inside. However, there may be only a small number of high-quality shelters or hiding places in each new territory. They are scarce and valuable. Other lobsters continuously seek them out. That means that lobsters often encounter one another when out exploring. Researchers have demonstrated that even a lobster raised in isolation knows what to do when such a thing happens. It has complex defensive and aggressive behaviors built right into its nervous system. It begins to dance around like a boxer, opening and raising its claws, moving backward, forward, and side to side, mirroring its opponent, waving its open claws back and forth. At the same time, it employs special jets under its eyes to determine streams of liquid at its opponent. The liquid spray contains a mix of chemicals that tell the other lobster about its size, sex, health, and mood. Sometimes one lobster can tell immediately from the display of claw size that it is much smaller than its opponent and will back down. Without a fight, the chemical information exchanged in the spray can have the same effect, convincing a less healthy or less aggressive lobster to retreat. That's dispute resolution level 1. If the two lobsters are very close in size and apparent ability, however, or if the exchange of liquid has been insufficiently informative, they will proceed to dispute resolution level 2. With an antenna whipping madly and claws folded downward, one will advance and the other retreat. Then the defender will advance and the aggressor retreat. And after a couple of rounds of this behavior, the more nervous of the lobster may feel that continuing is not in its best interest. He will flick his tail reflectively, dart backwards, and vanish to try his luck elsewhere. If neither blinks, however, the lobster moves to level 3, which involves genuine combat. This time, the now enraged lobster comes at each other viciously, and their claws extended to grapple. Each tries to flip the other on its back. A successful flipped-over lobster will conclude that its opponent is capable of inflicting serious damage. It generally gives up and leaves, although it harbors intense resentment and gossips endlessly about the victor behind its back. If neither can overturn the other, or if one will not quit despite being flipped, the lobsters move to level 4. Doing so involves extreme risk and is not something to be engaged in without forethought. One or both lobsters will emerge damaged from this ensuing fray, perhaps fatally. The animals advance on each other with increasing speed. Their claws are open so they can grab a leg, or antenna, or an eye stalk, or anything else exposed and vulnerable. Once a body part has been successfully grabbed, the grabber will tail flick backwards sharply, with claw clamped firmly shut, and try to tear it off. Disputes that have escalated to this point typically create a clear winner and loser. The loser is unlikely to survive, particularly if he or she remains in the territory occupied by the winner, now a mortal enemy. In the aftermath of a losing battle, regardless of how aggressively a lobster has behaved, it becomes unwilling to fight further, even against another, previously defeated opponent. A vanquished competitor loses confidence, sometimes for days. Sometimes the defeat can have even more severe consequences, and a dominant lobster is badly defeated and its brain basically dissolves. Then it grows a new subordinate brain, one more appropriate to its new lowly position. Its original brain just isn't sophisticated to manage the transformation from king to bottom dog without virtually complete dissolution and regrowth. Anyone who has experienced a painful transformation after a serious defeat in romance or career may feel some sense of kinship with one successful crustacean. The neurochemistry of defeat and victory. A lobster loser's brain chemistry differs importantly from that of a lobster winner. This is reflected in their relative postures. Whether a lobster is confident or cringing depends on the ratio of two chemicals that modulate communication between lobster neurons, serotonin and octopamine. Winning increases the ratio of the former to the latter. The lobster with high levels of serotonin and low levels of octopamine is a cocky, strutting sort of shellfish, much less likely to back down when challenged. This is because the serotonin helps regulate postural flexion. A flexed lobster extends its appendages so that it can look tall and dangerous like Clint Eastwood in a spaghetti western. When a lobster that has just lost a battle is exposed to serotonin, it will stretch itself out, advance even on former victors, and fight longer and harder. The drugs prescribed to depressed human beings, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, have the same chemical and behavioral effect. In one of the more staggering demonstrations of evolutionary continuity of life on Earth, Prozac even cheers up lobsters. High serotonin, low dopamine characterizes the victor. The opposite neurochemical configuration and a high ratio of octopamine to serotonin produces a defeated-looking, scrunched-up, inhibited, drooping, sulking sort of lobster, very likely to hang around street corners and to vanish at the first hint of trouble. Serotonin and octopamine also regulate the tail flick reflex, which serves to propel a lobster rapidly backwards when it needs to escape. Less provocation is necessary to trigger that reflex in a defeated lobster. You can see an echo of that in the heightened startle reflex characteristics of the older or battered child with a post-traumatic stress disorder. The principle of unequal distribution. When a defeated lobster regains its courage and dares to fight again, it is more likely to lose again than you would predict. Statistically, from a tally of its previous fights, its victorious opponent, on the other hand, is more likely to win. Is winner take all in the lobster world, just as it is in a human society, where the top 1% have as much loot as the bottom 50%, and where the richest 85 people have as much as the bottom 3.5 billion. The same brutal principle of unequal distribution applies outside the financial domain. Indeed, anywhere that creative production is required, the majority of scientific papers are published by a very small group of scientists, a tiny proportion of musician producers among all the recorded commercial music. Just a handful of authors shall sell all the books. 1.5 million separately titled books sell each year in the U.S. However, only 500 of these sell more than 100,000 copies. Similarly, just 4 classical composers, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, and Tchaikovsky, wrote almost all the music played by modern orchestras. Bach, for his part, composed the music played in modern so I'm going to the next line. Prolifically, that it would take decades of work merely to hand copy his scores. Yet only a small fraction of this prodigious output is commonly performed. The same thing applies to the output of the other 3 members of this group of hyper-dominant composers. Only a small fraction of their work is still widely played. Thus, a small fraction of the music composed by a small fraction of all the classical composers who have ever composed makes up about almost all the classical music that the world knows and loves. This principle is sometimes known as Price's law. After Derek J. de Sola Price, the researcher who discovered its application in science in 1963, can be molded using an approximately L-shaped graph with number of people on the vertical axis and productivity or resources on the horizontal. The basic principle has been discovered much earlier. Vilfredo Pareto, 1848-1923, an Italian polymath, noticed its applicability to wealth distribution in the early 20th century, and it appears true for every society ever studied, regardless of governmental form. It also applies to the population of cities. A very small number have almost all the people. A mass of heavenly bodies, a very small number hoard all the matter. And the frequency of words in a language, 90% of communication occurs using just 500 words, among many other things. Sometimes it is known as the Matthew principle, Matthew 25:29, derived from what it might be the harshest statement ever attributed to Christ. So those who have everything, more will be given. From those who have nothing, everything will be taken. You truly know you are the Son of God when you are addicted to apply, even to crustaceans. Back to the fractious shellfish. It doesn't take that long before lobsters testing each other out. Learn who could be messed with and who should be given a wide berth. And once they have learned, the resultant hierarchy is exceedingly stable. All a victor needs to do once he has won is to wiggle his antennae in a threatening manner, and a previous opponent will vanish in a puff of sand before him. A weaker lobster will quit trying, accept his lowly status, and keep his legs attached to his body. The top lobster, by contrast, occupying the best shelter, getting some good rest, finishing a good meal parades his dominance around his territory, rousting subordinate lobsters from their shelters at night, just to remind them who's their daddy. All the girls, the female lobsters, who also fight hard for territory during the explicitly maternal stages of their existence, identify the top guy quickly and become irresistibly attracted to him. This is brilliant strategy in my estimation. It also one used by females of many different species, including humans. Instead of undertaking the computationally difficult task of identifying the best man, the females outsource the problem to the machine-like calculations of the dominance hierarchy. They let the males fight it out and peel their paramours from the top. This is very much what happens with the stock market pricing, where the value of any particular enterprise is determined through the competition of all. When the females are ready to shed their shells and soften up a bit, they become interested in mating. They start hanging around the dominant lobster's pad, spraying attractive scents and operatic CX towards him, trying to seduce him. His aggression has made him successful, so he's likely to react in a dominant, irritable manner. Furthermore, he's large, healthy, and powerful. It's no easy task to switch his attention from fighting to mating. If properly charmed, however, he will change his behavior towards the female. This is the lobster equivalent of 50 Shades of Grey, the fastest selling paperback of all time, and the eternal Beauty and the Beast plot of archetypal romance. This is the pattern of behavioral continually representing in the sexually explicit literary fantasies that are as popular among women as provocative images of naked women are among men. It should be pointed out, however, that sheer physical power as an unstable bias on which to found lasting dominance, as the Dutch primatologist Frans de Waal has taken pains to demonstrate. Among the chimp troops he studied, males who were successful in the longer term had to buttress their physical prowess with more sophisticated attributes. Even the more brutal chimp Dissot can be taken down, after all, by two opponents, each 3/4 as mean. In consequence, males who stay on top longer are those who form reciprocal coalitions with their lower status compatriots, and who pay careful attention to the troops' females and their infants. The political ploy of baby kissing is literally millions of years old, but lobsters are still comparatively primitive, so the bare plot elements of Beast and Beauty suffice for them. Once the beast has been successfully charmed, and successful female lobster will disrobe, shedding her shell, making herself dangerously soft, vulnerable, and ready to mate. At the right moment, the lobster male, now converted into a careful lover, deposits a packet of sperm into the appropriate receptacle. Afterward, the female hangs around and hardens up for a couple of weeks, another phenomenon not entirely unknown among human beings. At her leisure, she returns to her own domicile laden with fertilized eggs. At this point, another female will attempt the same thing, and so on. The dominant male, with his upright and confident posture, not only gets the prime real estate and easiest access to the best hunting grounds. He also gets all the girls. It is exponentially more worthwhile to be successful if you're a lobster and male. Why is all this relevant? For an amazing number of reasons. Apart from those who are comically obvious, first we know that lobsters have been around in one form or another for more than 35 million years. This is a very long time. 65 million years ago, there were still dinosaurs that unimaginably distinct past to us. To the lobsters, however, dinosaurs were the new view rich, who appeared riche. Who appeared and disappeared in the flow of near-eternal time. This means that dominance hierarchies have been essentially permanent feature of the environment to which all complex life has adapted. A third of a billion years ago, brains and nervous system were comparatively simple. Nonetheless, they already had the structure of neurochemistry necessary to process information about the status in society. The importance of this fact can hardly be overstated. The nature of nature. I think I'm going to pause here, guys, at page 11. We had a good run. We got about 20 pages left. And we'll be finishing it up for this one. I'm going to post this on YouTube. Hopefully you'll be seeing more variety and more books coming from me, and a lot more postings from me. Remember, I'm on this path with you guys, just making it out here. The nature of nature, that's where we'll stop. If you like the video, if you like the audio of 12 Rules for Life and Antidote to Chaos, drop a like, maybe leave a comment if you're comfortable. Maybe these books will be in school.